A Night Away, Redwood Pack. Written by Carrie Ann Ryan. Narrated by Gregory Salinas. Chapter 1. Cade Jamison closed his eyes and prayed for resolution. A piercing shriek startled him, making him jump to his feet. Finn, his 11-month-old son, who wouldn't stop screaming no matter what they did. The kid always needed something, either to be fed, changed, held, burped, played with, or just stared at. It seemed never-ending. Even now that he was older, he still screamed or babbled constantly. Dear God, how the hell did humans do this? Cade had more endurance than any human, witch, and most werewolves out there. Yet a tiny 15-pound baby with big blue eyes took every ounce of strength he possessed, not to mention sleep time. Cade groaned and rolled his neck before he walked into his son's room. He and Melanie had painted the room in a soft green to match the Jamison eyes and added cream borders to break it up. Dark wood furniture filled the room, along with cream linens covered with frog princes and bumblebees. Stuffed animals of every sort covered the tops of most pieces of furniture, gifts from his pack and family, who cherish Finn like their own son. He took another step in and realized he hadn't been the first one to answer his son's call. His mate, Mel, sat in the rocking chair, her blonde hair in a frazzled halo around her face. She cradled Finn to her chest and rocked back and forth. Her blouse was unbuttoned, and their son suckled on his mate's breast. Pure male satisfaction rolled through him at the thought of the love of his life feeding their young. He'd thought he'd been insatiable watching her waddle when she'd been round and heavy, but that was nothing compared to her now. He always wanted her, though the times of touching had been far and few between lately. After the birth, she'd rounded a bit more than when he'd first met her. She'd always had delicious curves, but now she looked motherly, womanly, and his. Her head rested on the headrest, her body in auto mode while she fed their son. Darkening circles lay heavily under her eyes, and Cade wanted to cure himself. No matter how much Finn took from him, Mel dealt with the worst of it. Cade at least got a moment's relief when he went to work or dealt with pack business. But Mel didn't have that option. Even when she did her duties for the pack and acted as their heir's mate, she would hold Finn or wrap him around her in a sling. Mel didn't get a break, but she needed one. Immediately, Cade felt like shit. How could he blame that little bundle of everything that held parts of both him and Mel? It wasn't Finn's fault he was so small and helpless. He relied on his parents for everything, and sometimes Cade felt like it wasn't enough. You are a good father, Cade. Doubt only spreads pain. Your son will grow strong and intelligent because of you and Mel. If only Cade could agree with his wolf. Sometimes he felt so helpless. Not like the heir of the Redwood Pack, the strongest pack of werewolves on the continent. He shook his head, clearing his thoughts, and walked towards his life. He knelt beside the rocking chair and grazed a knuckle along the sweet smell of his mate's breast. Finn scrunched his nose and continued to suckle. Cade ran a fingertip down his son's cheek, the soft feel of his skin like sweet cream. He's always hungry, it seems, Mel whispered, her eyes still closed. Cade lowered his head and kissed Finn on the top of his baby-soft hair. I wish there was a way for me to help. I know we have bottles of breast milk, but it takes so long for you to pump that I hate wasting it. It's okay. I like doing it, even though sometimes I feel like he's draining the life out of me. I like the connection. He stood up and kissed his mate on the mouth. Her velvet soft lips parted, and his tongue darted inside for a quick taste. Cade pulled back, his eyes at half-mast. Mel's pale skin flushed, and her blue eyes clouded with lust. But that didn't hide the evidence of her exhaustion. Though she was a werewolf, little or no sleep took its toll. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too, my Cade." His wolf growled and clawed at his skin. Mel and Cade had only made love a few times since Finn had been born. Having only a handful of memories to sate a need of such intensity kept him and his wolf on edge. And being on edge in the times of war was dangerous, though he couldn't use their war with the Centrals as an excuse. No, he wanted his wife. But between the pack, Finn, work, exhaustion, and family, they'd grown apart. He couldn't let that happen. They were mates, a connection far beyond the simplicity of a marriage. No, their souls were connected deeper than anything imaginable to a human. But though their souls and lives were connected, it took more than that to be happy. They needed to be together physically. And it was a need so primal that his wolf wanted to take control and mount his mate any time they were together. Cade missed being with his mate. He missed sitting on the porch and talking about their day. He missed lying next to her when she slept and tracing his fingers along her brow, her breasts, down her stomach, and then waking her up with a release that would make them both beg for more. But they couldn't do that anymore. "Cade, will you burp Finn? I need to go clean up." Mel leaned forward, depositing the warm weight of their son in his arms, and Cade pulled back and stood up, his other arm outstretched. Mel placed her small hand in his, and he pulled her close to his body. She sagged against him and sighed. "I miss you," she rumbled into his chest, her warm breath tickling his chest hairs through the open collar on his shirt. He let out a breath and held his life close. "I miss you too." Mel pulled back and smiled a tired smile. "I'll meet you in the kitchen. Willow left us some oatmeal chocolate chip cookies." His hunger for sugar couldn't compare against the hunger for his wife, but he still let her go clean up. Cade rubbed small circles into Finn's back before patting him. Finn released a loud belch and cooed. "Yeah, that's my boy. A burp worthy of any Jamison male. And, well, Kaylin, too. I warn you now, don't mess with your auntie. She may be small, but she can take most of us on a good day. But don't tell her I said that." Cade paced around the room, willing Finn to sleep. "You know I love you, right? Because, Finn, I do. I know your mama and I seem tired when we're around, but that doesn't mean it's your fault. You're just an itty-bitty baby. You need us. So don't feel bad that we look so out of it when we're with you. We love you so much, Finn." Cade paused and took a calming breath. "You are our everything. Never forget that." The dangers that lurked outside their pack wards were of such a dark power, it scared the hell out of him. With each battle, they gained a lead, a new way to fight back, but it still didn't seem good enough. and without resorting to inhuman and evil methods, Cade was afraid they'd never take the upper hand again and win. And what would happen then? What would happen to his mate and son? Cade's body shook, but he tamped it down. He was the heir of the Redwood Pack, the second in command. It was his job to set out his father's orders and to take care of his pack. Yet, sometimes he didn't feel good enough, even though it had been better recently. Before he had met Mel, he had drifted, lost without a real cause or purpose. But then Jasper had made him go on a blind date with a lonely chemist. And the rest, as they say, is history, he murmured, gazing at his son. At this point, though, he'd like the history to be a bit less exhausting. He needed a night away with his mate. Cade smiled and put his sleeping son in his crib. Yes, that's exactly what he and Mel needed. A night away from their home, the pack, Finn, and their responsibilities. He wasn't naive enough to think it would solve everything, but he and Mel needed to reconnect and be with each other. And he needed to do it away from the pack, not just a night off with the babysitter. The demands of the pack and the war were taking a toll on his mating, and without a solid connection, he and Mel wouldn't be able to lead in the future when his father stepped down as alpha. No, they needed a break, not from each other, but from everyone else. A sharp pain shot through his heart. He looked down at his sleeping son and closed his eyes. A break. Yeah, like that could happen. No matter how much he and Mel needed time for each other, he couldn't leave Finn. He didn't want to. He didn't want to miss a moment of his son's life. What if he grew or learned something new? Cade would never forgive himself if he and Mel missed a milestone in their son's life because he felt like he needed a break. Did that make him a bad father? Failure seeped over him. God, what if he couldn't do it? What if he failed at raising his son, defending his pack? Everything. Cade shook his head. No, that was not the right path to take. He was the heir, damn it. He didn't have time for self-doubt. People relied on him. He left Finn's room and walked to the kitchen, where Mel stood in one of his old t-shirts and a pair of volleyball shorts. She rocked from foot to foot, a cookie in hand, and her eyes closed as she hummed a tune off key. Damn, his woman was sexy. Cade prowled behind her, the gold glow of his eyes, evidence of his arousal, marking his path. He wrapped his calloused palms around her hips, and she swiveled. His erection dug into his zipper, and he growled. "Eating something sweet, are you?" He bit her earlobe, and she shivered in his hold. "Willow's cookies are manna." "Uh-huh. I think I want something a bit sweeter." He pressed his erection into the small of her back and ground against her. She arched her back, a soft growl rumbling in her throat, and her honey vanilla scent grew sharper as her arousal flared. His little wolf was just as turned on as he was. Good. "We have ice cream in the freezer, I think." She gasped as he licked a trail from behind her ear to the back of her neck. "Not sweet enough." "I think I have an idea then." "Do you?" He thrust his hips and pushed her against the countertop. Her hands gripped the marble, and he trailed his palms down her sides and slapped her ass with one quick sting. She gasped and wiggled her butt. Cade smiled a feral smile, gripped the edge of her shorts, then slid them down to her ankles. Her bare bottom fit his hands perfectly, and he threw his head back and howled softly. "You weren't wearing any panties, you little minx." "Cade." He bent over, lifted the shirt she wore, and trailed kisses down her spine. He licked and caressed before biting down on one soft globe. "More." He bit harder, then licked the sting. He parted her cheeks and lowered his face. Finn cried out, and the smell of a dirty diaper filled the room, breaking the moment. Cade rested his head on Mel's backside and sighed. Mel moaned and bent farther to pull up her shorts. "I've got it. Will you start breakfast? We have a pack circle this morning, and Larissa said she'd watch Finn so I can go." Mel scurried away, and Cade groaned. Could a wolf die of a hard-on? Suddenly, that vacation away from everything sounded not like a dream, but a necessity. Just one night away. He'd do whatever it took to make that happen, because if he didn't get time alone with his mate, he just might scream. Chapter 2. The next morning, Melanie lifted Finn's little bottom and removed the dirty diaper. He looked up at her with 2 wise eyes and babbled with his normal incoherence. With the efficiency of practice, she wiped, powdered, and clothed him in a new diaper before he cried out again. They said werewolf babies didn't go colic, but Mel wasn't too sure of that. Her baby cried more than she'd ever thought possible, and for such a small thing, he had a voice that rivaled any of his uncles, and a temperament to match. He was a Jamison through and through. Sometimes that was a good thing. And yet, when Mel needed just one more moment of rest, she wanted to scream. She looked down at her little bundle of joy and sighed. Yeah, the little monster was a handful of cute, all right. Beware, ladies. Already, he had a full head of dark brown hair that matched his daddy's. Finn had her eyes, though, and she liked that a little part of her was in their son as well. The Jamison genes were so dominant, she had been afraid she would be lost in Finn's genetics. But, as a scientist, she should have known better. There was always a probability of mixed features. She shouldn't have been worried. Mel picked Finn up and held him against her chest, and he wrapped his chubby arms around her neck. She sighed. How was it possible she could love something so small so deeply in such a short amount of time? She'd felt the connection to Finn when she'd been pregnant, but it was nothing compared to the feeling she had whenever she looked down in those blue eyes. It was like Finn had known who she was from the moment he took his first breath. Like he knew she'd be the one by his side and there to hold him when he needed her. But that was just it. He seemed to need her every waking and sleeping moment. Even though he was on solid foods now, he still needed to be nursed at least a couple of times a day. Mel was beyond exhausted, and she knew Cade was too. Though he'd tried to deny it, she knew he'd been disappointed that their interlude in the kitchen had been fruitless. She shivered and rocked Finn. She missed the feel of her mate's work-worn hands on her soft skin. She missed the way he'd walk in a room with eyes only for her. Oh, he still looked at her like she was a center of his world, but she wasn't the only center anymore. Oh, God, she was a horrible mother. Who in their right mind would be so selfish to want to be the only one in their mate's eyes? It wasn't Finn's fault his family loved him. Mel choked back a sob. What was wrong with her? She cried at the drop of a hat. And she was always so tired. But everything she did was for Finn or the pack. She didn't have time to think about herself. And even letting her thoughts trail beyond that made her feel worthless and not worthy of being called the heir's mate and Finn's mother. Was it so bad that if only for a moment she missed being just Mel? Or even just the Mel part of Mel and Cade? Sometimes she felt lost within herself and the people around her, and that wasn't the sign of a good future alpha's mate. How could she expect the pack to follow her if she didn't even know herself? Finn nuzzled her breast, and Mel let out another sigh. Dear Lord, all this kid seemed to do was poop, sleep, cry, and eat. A never-ending cycle that was quickly sucking the life out of her. Mel? Willow called out from the living room. Are you okay? Come out here with Finn. Mel tugged Finn closer, grabbed a nursing cloth, and walked out to the living room. Hannah was plating up cookies and fruit with glasses of milk. Willow sat on the couch, her breast out, feeding baby Bree. You ever feel like a cow? Willow asked, and Mel chuckled. All the time. It's like I'm just a factory for this kid. Mel sat back in the armchair and deftly unbuttoned her blouse, unsnapped the cup on her nursing bra, and brought Finn closer. She tapped his chubby cheek, and he latched onto the nipple like a drunken sailor. She laughed at that reference. What's so funny? Hannah asked, and nibbled on a sugar cookie. I think I just mentally compared my son to a drunken sailor. There must be something wrong with me. The three women broke out into laughter, and tears spilled onto their cheeks. Oh my God, that's a perfect description. Bree whimpered in Willow's arms. Shh, Bree. She patted her daughter's bottom and guided her back to her nipple. Bree latched on again, greedily sucking. I can actually see Finn and Bree in the little sailors' uniforms. Hannah's face brightened. Oh, me too. Mel shook her head. I think our men would strangle us. Willow smiled. All the more reason to do it. Come on. Mom and Kaylin would join in. Mel tilted her head. I think I'd like to see that. Hannah jumped up and down in her seat and rubbed her hands together. Leave it to me. When did we become the type of mothers that dressed our kids in funny costumes? Mel asked. You met me. Hannah shrugged, unrepentant. I would have thought it would have been Kaylin's fault, Willow added. True. Mel nodded and lay back while Finn finished feeding. So Hannah, how are your boys? Hannah blushed. She'd mated Reed, Mel's brother-in-law, and Josh, a human-turned-partial demon, and looked like she loved every bit of it. Mel could barely handle Cade and all the testosterone that came with him. She didn't know how Hannah dealt with twice the male flesh and intensity. They're good. Real good. Hannah blushed again, and Mel and Willow laughed. That's always a good sign. Mel smiled, and Finn cooed. She shifted and put him on her shoulder, burped him, buttoned up, then relaxed against the backrest. Finn stared up at her with his big blue eyes and babbled that incoherent baby language that, even though no one understood it, she loved. Well, at least she did when he was being cute. When he was babbling and screaming, she thought she'd pull her hair out. She looked up and felt Hannah's gaze on her. Mel frowned and tilted her head. Is everything okay, hun? Hannah let out a sigh, and Willow gripped her hand. Tell us, the other woman softly demanded. It's nothing, really. If it's nothing, then you won't mind telling us, Mel said. But it has to be something if it's bothering you. You're going to think it's stupid, Hannah said. But Reed, Josh, and I have been trying to have a baby since the wedding. Well, if you want to be serious, since the night of the fire when we stopped using condoms. But every time I get my period,
I want to break down and weep. It's just so frustrating, you know?
Mel's heart broke for her sister-in-law.
You're just getting started. Don't worry. It will happen for you.
Willow hugged Hannah closer, and Bree held out a chubby fist, seeming to know that Hannah needed all the comfort she could get. Hannah gave a small smile and trailed her finger along Bree's fist. The little girl opened her hand and then gripped Hannah's finger. Hannah gasped, and a tear fell down her cheek.
I know it takes some people a long time, but I'm the healer. I should be able to figure out a way for this to happen for my boys and me. I just want it to happen for us. I mean, I have too. You'd think that would increase the possibility.
The women laughed at that.
But then I think, well, if I can't get pregnant with 2 men, maybe it's me.
Hannah choked out a sob, and Willow kissed her brow. Mel got up, Finn in her arms, and sat on the woman's other side and held her close.
Hannah, you can't think like that. You know that.
Hannah took a deep breath.
I know. I just can't help it. And then I watch the 2 of you and your precious babies, and I feel so jealous. And then I feel worse that I feel jealous over it. Oh, Hannah,
Willow whispered.
You can't think that way. It will happen for you. I know it. It just takes time. And when it does happen, it will be because you and your boys are ready and willing. You won't be caught unaware like me and Mel.
Mel nodded.
True. We were both surprised by our babies.
Willow smiled.
But it was worth it. I wouldn't trade a minute. I can't wait for you to feel what we feel.
Mel looked away. Warm anger and resentment burned. It wasn't rational, but she couldn't help it. How did Willow do it? How was she so happy and healthy, and how could she look so amazing? Was Willow a better mother than her?
Mel?
Willow asked.
What's wrong? What did I say? What?
Mel shook herself. She would not break down in front of these women.
I'm fine.
Hannah leaned into her.
You can't lie to the healer when it comes to something being wrong. You're more tired than usual, Mel. What's going on?
Mel held Finn closer and looked into his blue eyes.
Nothing. I'm fine. Melanie,
Willow said.
You're not fine. Tell us.
Mel closed her eyes and choked back a sob. Could she tell these women she felt like a failure? That she missed her husband and mate, though they slept next to each other every night?
I'm just so tired,
Mel finally let out. Both women waited silently for her to continue.
I haven't had a decent night's sleep since I was 6 months pregnant. They tell me that werewolves don't have colic, but I don't believe them. And yes, I know, Hannah. You said there was nothing wrong with him. He's a perfectly healthy baby. Yet he cries all the time. And I can't ignore him. I know some people say to let them cry it out, so Kate and I tried that once, and it about killed us both. Finn cried and called out for us, but we sat on the floor outside his room and had to listen to him scream for us. I felt like such a bad mother.
Hannah gripped her hand and squeezed.
I feel like a bad mom all the time these days. I feel like nothing I do is right. Everything I do is for Finn or for the pack, but I don't feel like it's doing any good. I feel like I'm failing my son. I never have any time for myself. I don't remember the last time I just sat on the porch with my Kindle and read a book. I don't remember the last time I watched TV without a baby attached to my boob. And I'm so tired all the time. Mel, why didn't you say anything? And where was Cade?
Willow asked.
Cade was right by my side. He does so much and picks up the slack when I feel useless. We do our duties and protect the pack, but when we come home, it's like we're drowning.
Mel hiccuped and wiped her eyes. She broke down in gut-wrenching sobs, and Finn patted her chest. Ever her son was trying to comfort her. What was wrong with her? Your son loves you, Mel. You are just tired. Mel closed her eyes at her wolf's words.
Mel.
Hannah took her face in her hands, and Mel stared into those dove-gray eyes.
You are not a bad mother. You are amazing. You just need a moment or two to breathe. But
Mel hiccuped again, but shook her head. She needed to stop crying. She was stronger than that.
I miss Cade so much.
Willow scrunched her brows.
I thought he was by your side. He is, but I miss him and me. You know, we haven't...
Willow nodded in understanding.
Bree is much quieter than Finn, so Jasper and I have time alone. But you know, with the amount of family you have, we can always take him for the night.
Mel shook her head.
But he'll scream the whole night. Mom and Dad tried to take him for the night, but he screamed all night for us. I just don't understand it. I miss my mate, girls. I miss myself. I just need a break or something.
Mel looked down at her son, who stared back at her and babbled.
God, did I just say that? What is wrong with me?
Willow smiled.
You sound like a tired mom. It's okay to want a break every now and then, Melanie. You aren't a bad person for voicing it. Then why do I feel like I don't deserve him?
Hannah brushed a lock of hair out of Finn's face, tears in her eyes.
All babies are precious, and you deserve that baby in your arms. You do, Mel. And it's okay to ask for help.
Mel held Finn closer. Was it really that easy? No, of course not. Nothing ever was these days. But maybe she and Cade could talk about it. She loved their time in the kitchen. She just wanted more. But did he? Chapter 3. Cade struck the hammer against the nail head and relished the power of his strength and working with his hands. He missed this. With the demands of the pack, he hadn't been able to do much with Jasper's and his contracting business. Though Jasper did most of the building, and Cade handled the architectural aspects, he still loved working with his hands. He took the last nail from his mouth and hammered it into the stud and stood back. The frame of the new schoolhouse was coming along nicely. After the attack that had killed so many and had taken Reed from them, if only for a few short days, the pack had slowly begun to rebuild. They'd already built new homes for those that had lost theirs, though they couldn't replace the memories and everything else they'd lost. The schoolhouse was the last big thing on their list. Pups were allowed to go to public school if their parents wanted, but it was easier to just have them go to school in the den. There was always something going on, and by the time they were old enough to be in school, they could change into a wolf. It was just too dangerous to have a small child who was still learning control in a classroom with other children who were human. Human and witch children who had werewolves in their families attended the den school as well. But if there was a control problem, there were adults who knew how to deal with it. It was a one-room school with just one teacher and parents who helped, but it was high-tech with computers and online programming, so they had a top-of-the-line education. It was more of a place to meet and be homeschooled. It worked better than most of the public schools that some of the pups went to, and Cade was pretty sure Finn would be attending there. Mel was so smart, it was actually a bit scary. and he had no doubt his wide-eyed son would inherit at least a small fraction of that, if not more. Cade leaned against the post and looked out onto the den. It was his home. He had always had the misguided notion it was safe, but that wasn't the case. They'd learned the hard way that no matter the strength of their wolves and their wards, dark magic was stronger. Cade shook his head, disgusted. It sickened him that his own species would resort to the level the Centrals had, and the redwoods were losing. Not a place he liked to be. "Hey, Cade, get your head out of your ass and help," Jasper called. His brother looked just like him, except Jasper was a bit bigger, his hair a shade darker. "Sorry, Jas." Reed, his other brother, shook his sandy blonde hair and furrowed his brows. "Why are you apologizing? You just put up a whole wall by yourself. Jasper was being an ass. What's up?" That damn sensitive brother of his was too attentive for his own good. "Cade's a bit tired is all," Maddox chimed in. Speaking of attentive brothers, Maddox was the omega of the pack, meaning his dark blonde-haired brother could feel the emotions of the entire pack, and Cade couldn't hide his current dilemma from him. The bastard. Josh, Reed's male mate, walked up to him and looked him over. "Tired? Melanie keeping you up late?" Cade groaned. "I wish. That's precisely the problem." Oh shit. He hadn't meant to say that aloud. Cade quickly looked over his shoulder to see if anyone else was around, but they were alone. The rest of the pack up in the residential area of the den. Jasper set his stools down and walked over to him. "Something going on between you and Melanie? I thought you guys got past all of that before you mated." Cade closed his eyes and fought back the anger at the memories of Mel's and his past. He'd had to fight for the right to mate her because of that jerk, and then she'd walked away. She'd been too overwhelmed by the prospect of the supernatural, and Cade hadn't given her time to think about it. And since she had such an analytical mind, she needed the time. Without it, she'd left, and Cade's world had fallen apart. Thank God Mel had come back. "We're past that, Jasper. This is a different issue." Josh pulled out the cooler and passed around beers. Cade popped off the top and let the cold brew wash down his throat. The beer wouldn't give him a buzz, but he still loved the taste, and he could at least pretend it did the trick. It took copious amounts of hard liquor for a werewolf to get intoxicated. Too much for him to deal with. He lowered his head, his hair falling in front of his face. "Just spit it out," Maddox growled. "We can't help if you clam up." Cade looked at his younger brother and raised a brow. Ironic that the most closely guarded Jamison would say that. "Fine," Cade spat. "Mel and I are beyond tired. We need a break." Reed sputtered, his beer spraying everywhere. "What do you mean, break?" Jasper wiped the foam off his face and growled. "I don't think Cade meant that. But thanks for the shower, douchebag." Josh threw a bottle cap at Jasper. "Watch whose mate you call a douchebag, grease lover." Jasper's face colored, and Cade laughed. God, when was the last time he'd just sat back, shooting the shit with his brothers? He shook his head. Whenever it had been too damn long ago. Not only did he and Mel need some time together, he needed some time with his family. "Jasper is right, Reed, but thanks for being so appalled at the thought. But really, do you think I'd be sitting here right now if Mel and I were beyond repair?" A copper taste settled on his tongue, and bile rose in his throat at the thought. No, he couldn't even think that. "But we do need a break from here." Josh sat forward. "You mean from the pack?" Maddox frowned. "You can't leave the pack, Cade." Jasper and Reed growled. This wasn't going well. Cade held up his hands. No, that's not what I meant. For the love of God, let me finish a sentence before you all think the worst of me. Though I can't think of anything worse than what you guys were thinking. The other men settled back, glares on their faces, but at least they were quiet. Finn won't sleep through the night, even now. I don't know what exactly is going on. North and Hannah have both looked at him, and they say he's just restless and growing up. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's killing Mel and me. We haven't had a moment to ourselves since she was pregnant. Jasper's brows rose. You mean... We've made love a few times, but that was only because we were on a hunt and had a moment away. But it isn't enough. Damn right, Josh put in. I'm not a werewolf, but I have similar energies when it comes to that. You need more release than what you're getting. No wonder you're on edge. All of them nodded. Cade ground the heels of his hands into his eyes. I'm just so frustrated, and not because I'm not getting any. Well, not only because of that. But have you seen my mate? She's so tired and is constantly taking care of Finn. I'm there by her side, but there is only so much I can do since I don't have tits. Maddox opened his mouth, but Jasper knocked him upside the head. Not the time. Mel is so drawn and exhausted that I feel like I'm failing her. She's got bags under her eyes and I can't fix it. I can't stand to see my mate in pain. Cade held his head in his hands, and his body shuddered. He hated to show weakness in front of others. But this was his family, goddammit. He needed them to be strong for him once. Well, what are you going to do about it? Jasper asked, ever the beta. I want to take her away just for a night. You mean outside of the den's boundaries? Reed asked. Is that safe? Cade shook his head. Nothing is really truly safe anymore. But Mel and I need this. I want to take her away and pretend we're alone. I know it won't fix our problems. We need to figure out a way to manage what we have. But in order to do that, we need to recharge. Josh nodded. Okay. How can we help? Cade loved this new brother of his. As an ex-SEAL, he saw the objective and knew there needed to be a plan. Just what Cade needed. I need someone to stay at our house for the night and take Finn. He screamed so much when he stayed over at Mom and Dad's. Hopefully staying in his own room. It won't be so bad. Cade crossed his fingers. When do you want to do this? Jasper asked. Tomorrow. The sooner the better. Plus, I have a plan. But the place won't be open after that. Josh and Reed looked at each other and shook their heads. What? Cade asked. Reed cleared his throat. We can't. I'm sorry, Cade. Hannah is ovulating tomorrow, so we'll be busy. Josh cut in. An awkward silence settled over the group, and they each shifted in their chairs. Jasper finally spoke up. And I can't leave Willow at home with Bree. Bree's teething. Cade closed his eyes and groaned at the memory of Finn's first tooth. And, Jasper continued, I don't know if you want to ask Adam. The group went silent again. Their brother Adam had come back from his trek to God knows where, a changed man. Though ever since he'd lost Anna and their baby to the Centrals, he'd been dark and quiet. It was even worse now. They didn't know what had happened to him, where he'd been, but it couldn't have been good. I agree, Cade said, and I think North said he had plans with Ellie. Maddox growled, and his beer bottle shattered in his hands. What the hell? Maddox wiped the blood on his pants. I can take care of Finn. Cade's brows rose. Are you sure? From what he could remember, Maddox had never really had an affinity toward Finn or Bree. Since his brother could feel every single emotion, maybe a small child with only brightness and not a thing to dull it within them would be too much for him. Maddox nodded. I don't mind. It's just for a night, right? Don't you trust me? Maddox glared at Cade, a defiant look in his eyes. Of course I trust you, Mad, Cade assured him. Then it's settled. Jasper will take care of Bree, Reed and Josh will knock up Hannah, you'll have your way with Mel, and I'll take care of the rugrat. Problem solved. The group merely blinked at him. Cade, Jasper said, this won't solve all your problems. You guys are going to have to figure out what to do with Finn. He can't keep running you ragged. Cade sighed. I know. We'll have to figure something out. But I need time away from here that's just for me and my mate. Then we'll help you, Josh put in. That's what family's for. Cade looked around at his brothers and gave a small smile. Yeah, thank God for them. And with their help, he'd get his Mel alone and naked, and preferably sweaty and glowing. Yeah, that sounded perfect. He just had to get his mate to agree to leave their son at home with Maddox. Sure, that would be simple, right? Chapter 4. Finn wiggled in Mel's arms, and she sat him down on the floor. He scooted on his bottom to his blocks and began to make a tower, just like his daddy. Though he could crawl and pull himself up when he gripped the table, he seemed in no hurry to walk. He babbled away, a smile on his face. Mel groaned and stretched her arms over her head. Her body ached from carrying Finn around all the time. She couldn't wait for him to be able to walk. But then the thought of him walking and getting into more trouble than usual would enter her mind, and she'd dread it. With Finn occupied with his blocks, she tidied the living room, picking up nursing cloths, stuffed animals, and other toys. Their home always looked like a tornado had blown through. Well, it had. The Finn tornado. She and Cade were constantly picking up after the little terror, but she loved the little guy, even if he was sucking the life out of her. The front door opened, and Cade walked in, a sensual smile on his face. Oh Lord, she loved that smile. She missed that smile. He prowled toward her, his eyes never leaving her face. She sighed and held the stuffed frog to her chest. Oh, how she loved this man. He leaned over her and kissed her softly on the lips, lingering for a moment, but not long enough for her. Cade pulled back. Hey, buddy. He leaned down and picked up Finn, who stood by his daddy's leg, pulling on the denim material. Cade held Mel in one arm and Finn in the other. She leaned into him, and he kissed Finn's chubby cheek. It was times like these that she could almost forget the mess of the house, the lack of sleep, and the fact that she hadn't made love to her husband in months. Almost. Finn's a big boy, isn't he? Cade asked. And yes, Finn was getting bigger every second, it seemed. Just like his daddy, Mel agreed. Cade gave her a smoldering look and raised a brow. She swatted him with the stuffed frog. Stop it. You know that's not what I meant. Keep your mind out of the gutter. You're holding Finn. A sad expression passed over his face, but he quickly blanked it. Come on, Finn. You want to show me what you've been building? Finn smiled and wiggled down from Cade's arms. Her little boy stood on wobbly legs and then walked towards his tower of blocks. Mel gripped Cade's arm. Cade. I see, Mel. Look at you go, buddy. Cade beamed like a proud daddy, and Mel's eyes filled with tears. Look at our baby boy. Mel sniffed at her wolf's voice. Yes, he was truly their little boy. But he wasn't so little anymore. What was wrong with her? She'd just been thinking that she couldn't wait for Finn to grow up, so she'd have a moment to think.
and now she couldn't bear the thought. Is this what all parents went through?
Finn waddled to his blocks and landed on his bottom with a thump before putting another block on his tower. He turned his head and smiled at his daddy, and Mel choked back a sob. Cade held her close and kissed her temple. "Hey, are you okay, baby?" He looked into her eyes, and she melted. She could just sit there for hours and gaze at his jade-green eyes. His pupils dilated with lust, and a small rim of gold glowed around the iris. His brown hair fell around his face and brushed his shoulders. She used to love running her fingers through it when he slept, and trailing her fingers down his smooth chest before reaching the crisp hair at the base of his sex. God, she missed him.
I'm okay. I just can't believe he's walking.
Cade lifted a corner of his lips and brushed a lock of hair behind her ear. He was bound to do that eventually, though now we may have a terror on our hands.
Mel groaned. What do you mean? Now he's just more mobile.
Cade's gaze darkened. Hey, I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean to make you feel bad.
Mel shook her head. No, I'm okay, really. Just tired.
Oh, so tired. Like every other day. Cade kissed her forehead. I know you are. I am too. She leaned into his embrace and inhaled his clean wolf and man scent. He smelled like home, salvation, and future. Finn let out a wail and scrunched his face. Mel sighed and then smiled at her baby boy. She sat next to him and brushed the hair from his face. He would need a haircut soon, but she couldn't take that step. Plus, Cade liked his little boy's hair long because it looked so much like his.
What's wrong, little man? Mommy and Daddy weren't ignoring you? Much.
Cade let out a hollow laugh and sat next to her. No, we would never do that. Mel frowned.
Hey, what's that laugh about?
He shook his head. Nothing, just thinking.
About what?
Let's put Finn down for a nap, and we can talk about it. Chills raced up her arms, and a lead weight settled in her stomach. Oh, God. Was it too much for him? Was he leaving her and Finn? What if he didn't want them anymore? Her pulse raced, and she gripped the stuffed frog so she wouldn't hold on to Cade and never let him go. Cade stroked her cheek. Hey, none of that. Everything's fine. At least, it will be. She leaned into his touch, but didn't calm down. What did he want to talk about? Hey, buddy, it's time for your nap, Cade said. Finn scrunched his brows and frowned.
Yep, it is, baby,
Mel agreed. Come on, buddy. Cade settled Finn into his arms and stood before walking into Finn's room. Mel let out a ragged sigh and leaned against the entertainment center. Too much had just happened.
Her little boy had taken his first steps, and Cade was leaving her.
Well, he hadn't come out and said it,
but what else could that cryptic comment mean?
She knew she and Cade had been drifting apart since the baby was born.
They'd just been too busy and too tired to do anything about it.
And other than the casual touches recently, it hadn't felt like they were really mated. Her wolf whined, and Mel shut her eyes. Even her wolf missed Cade's wolf. They didn't go out hunting anymore, really. She only shifted when she needed to, and Cade did a little more because he was training the adolescents and protecting the den. She just needed a night off where she could focus on their bond, and then she'd be okay. They needed to talk about how to manage their son and their time. But if Cade wanted to leave, how would that work? Mel set her shoulders. She wasn't a pushover. She was the heir's mate, damn it.
Cade couldn't leave. Not unless she wanted him to. And by God, she didn't.
I can see the wheels turning in your head. Stop it, baby. It's not what you think,
Cade said as he walked back in the room and sat on the floor across from her. Mel raised her chin. And just what am I thinking?
I'm not quite sure, but it doesn't look good.
You can't leave us, Cade, Mel blurted out. Oh God, she hadn't meant to say it like that. Her pulse raced, but her gaze never left his. Cade paled and gripped her upper arms.
Dear God, is that what you thought? I would never, ever leave you and Finn. What kind of man do you think I am?
He let her go, stood, and paced around the room. Mel held back a sob. She wouldn't cry. Not now. I don't know, Cade. I just feel so cut off from you that I don't know what to think anymore. He ran a hand over his face and let out a soft growl.
See? This is our problem. We don't talk anymore. I'm so sorry that you'd even thought about that. It makes me wonder what I've done to make you even think I didn't want to be in this mating anymore.
He looked so broken that Mel stood and ran to his arms. She inhaled his scent and let her heartbeat sink with his. I'm sorry. I just miss you.
I miss you too, baby. But I have an idea.
She looked up at him and sniffed. What idea?
Let's go away tomorrow.
Away? You know we can't do that. But hope spread through her.
Yes, we can. Just for a night.
Cade kissed her forehead.
We need it, Mel. Even more than I thought if you were thinking that I'd leave you.
Mel kissed under his chin. I'm sorry, I didn't really think it. It was just sort of a worst-case scenario kind of thing. But you know we can't leave, Cade. We have Finn and other responsibilities. Cade let out a frustrated breath.
Those responsibilities are exactly why we need to leave. Just for a night. It's too much, Mel. We haven't had a decent conversation that didn't revolve around the pack or Finn in months. And we haven't made love in that time either.
He groaned, and she leaned into him. I know, Cade. I miss it too. But we can't.
We can, and we will. Just for a night.
Okay, let's for a second pretend we do this. What about Finn? That's where I come in, Maddox said from the doorway. Cade and Mel turned around. How had they not heard him? She swore that wolf had special stealth powers she didn't know about. What? She asked.
Maddox has agreed to watch Finn tomorrow night, Cade said.
Maddox walked into the house and closed the door. Mel frowned. Are you sure, Maddox? He scowled. Of course I'm sure. I wouldn't have volunteered if I weren't. Volunteered? Just what had Cade said to the wolf for that to happen? Okay. Mel let out a breath. But what about the dangers in the pack? Cade kissed her nose and smiled.
The pack can handle a night without us. And as for the dangers,
his eyes darkened.
It's dangerous anywhere, but we can take that risk. I'll protect you, no matter what.
Mel kissed his jaw. I know you will. As touching as this is, what is your answer, Mel? Maddox asked. Mel looked into Cade's green eyes and focused. She needed time with this man. Just the fact that she thought for a moment he'd leave her meant she did. And Cade cemented the fact that she was scared. Yes, she could admit that at least to herself. She was scared to death. She was floundering as a mother, as a mate, and a pack leader. She needed a moment to escape, to sit back and remember why she loved doing all these things, to remember that she loved her mate and needed him more than the air she breathed. She placed her palm in his face, his unshaved cheeks scraping against her skin, and she shivered at the thought of where else his 5 o'clock shadow could scrape her. His tanned skin looked like caramel against her pallor. She wanted to see where else they'd contrast when they lay naked in a sweaty pile. She needed a break, if only for a night. "Okay," she finally whispered. "That sounds wonderful."
Maddox released a sigh, and Cade smiled. "Good."
"Where are we going?"
"It's a surprise." Cade gave a smoldering look, and Mel melted into a puddle. "And that's my cue to leave," Maddox grunted. "I'll be here in the morning to take care of the rugrat. Bye, folks." Maddox closed the door, and Mel sank into Cade.
"Can we leave now?"
she whispered into his ear. He leaned down and bit her earlobe. "Tomorrow, my love." His voice rumbled against her skin, and she shivered. Maybe they could start their vacation early. The phone rang, halting her sweet thoughts.
Darn it, pack duty calls.
But at least now she had something to look forward to. Chapter 5. Cade inhaled the crisp scent of ocean and closed his eyes. The sound of waves crashing against the surf and seagulls flying overhead sent a sensation of peace through him. He and Mel had been parked outside their rented beach house for only 5 minutes, and he already felt loads more relaxed. Maybe he needed only that moment away to feel better. Mel walked up beside him, and he wrapped his arms around her and drew her to stand in front of him. Her little bottom rubbed against his erection, and he groaned. Okay, he needed a bit more. But now that he was alone with his mate, there was no doubt that he'd take her in every fashion possible. His body was strung tight, primed. He needed her more than anything, now. It had been a chore leaving the house a few hours before. They'd had to make sure the pack was taken care of, and his brother Adam had said he'd managed everything. Even though he knew his brother was going through some things, Cade could always trust Adam. Then they had to make sure that they were safe when they got here, so Hannah had made a few herb bags that could act as mobile wards. They weren't as efficient as sentries or the actual den wards, but it would keep them cloaked to most seeing eyes and would alert them to intruders faster than his keen senses. However, even though all of that had taken time, it didn't compare to leaving Finn alone. He and Mel had almost called it off before they even started. Finn screamed for them, and Maddox, the man who rarely revealed any hints of emotion, looked overwhelmed. But his brother had shaken his head and told them to leave, that he and his nephew needed some time alone to get to know one another. And frankly, Mel and Cade needed to make sure their lives weren't controlled by their son. Yes, Finn was the center of their world, but he couldn't have every aspect of it and get everything he wanted. It didn't work that way. They'd kissed their son and walked out the door stiffly. Finn's cries came through the door, but they got in their car anyway. He and Mel held hands on the drive, but stayed silent. They hadn't talked like he had wanted, but the silence was something they hadn't had in months. It was soothing and mind-clearing, needed. Cade leaned down and kissed the top of his mate's head. She rolled her neck, and he trailed kisses down her skin, her honey vanilla taste settling on his tongue. He nibbled her neck and ran his hand up her stomach under her shirt and cupped her breast. She arched against him and moaned. "Cade, I've wanted this for months." "Just be careful, I'll leak." Cade let the heavy mounds lay firm in his hold, and he squeezed just a little, not hard enough to let the milk come out. "I'll be careful, but it may get messy." Mel pressed her breast into his palm, her nipple pebbling through her bra.
Anything, Cade. Anything you want.
Cade leaned back and released her with a groan. She whimpered, and he fought the urge to bend her over the SUV and take her right there. I want to spend the whole night with you, and I plan on it. But let's at least unload the SUV first so we don't have to get out of bed unless we want to. He bit her earlobe, and she shivered. She turned in his arms, bit his chin, and hurried to the car to get her bag. Cade chuckled and watched her ass move in her tight jeans. She should have worn a skirt. He wanted to flip it over and fuck her senseless, but he'd settle with peeling her out of those skinny jeans and licking trails to her pussy. His body shook, and he grabbed his bag. Yeah, that sounded fucking delicious. He followed his mate as she ran to the beach cottage and unlocked the door. As soon as she set her bag down, he dropped the ice chest and gripped her hips.
Cade!
Shh. He walked her backwards until she stood on the porch, looking over the ocean with him. The cool Oregon breeze wove through their hair as the salty ocean scent surrounded them. He turned her so she faced him, and he stood there transfixed. This was his mate, his Melanie. God, how he'd missed her. She gave a small smile and exhaled slowly.
It's beautiful here, Cade. Thank you.
Not as beautiful as you.
That is such a line, but I love you anyway.
Cade raised a brow. Really?
She nodded. Uh-huh. Let me show you how much.
She gripped his hips and slowly lowered to her knees. Shocked, he looked down. Mel, baby, you don't need to do that. This is supposed to be about you.
No, this is supposed to be about us. We're secluded, no one around for miles, and with the wards set on the house, no one can see. Let me taste you, Cade.
He groaned and stroked her cheek. Far be it from me to hold you back. She smiled and unsnapped his cargo shorts. He sucked in a breath and brushed a hand through her hair. Mel nuzzled his dick through his boxer briefs, and he gripped her hair. She lowered his shorts and pants so they lay around his ankles. Tendrils of pleasure shot up his spine as she kissed his thigh and around the base of his cock. Unconsciously, he let his head fall back and thrust against her mouth. She licked up the vein on the bottom of his dick, and he moaned and opened his eyes to look down at her. Her blue eyes were wide and dark with passion. Gazes locked, she wrapped her warm mouth around the head of his cock and swirled her tongue. Hell, she was going to kill him. She lowered her head slowly, his dick disappearing in her mouth, her lips enveloping his shaft. This was perfection. She hollowed her cheeks and sucked him whole. Cade tightened his grip on her hair and thrust between her lips. He hit the back of her throat, but didn't pause. She looked up at him, her blue eyes deep with lust and love. He thrust in and out as she worked him. Her left hand scraped his thigh as her right one fondled his balls. Mel, baby, I'm gonna... His gaze locked with hers, and he came. He shot down her throat, and she swallowed every bit of him. He caressed her cheek and groaned. I think you almost killed me.
Oh, really? So you only had one good hit in you?
His mate teased. Oh, really? Is that all you think I have? Cade growled and tore her clothes from her body, then removed the rest of his. She gasped and froze. He smiled a feral smile, gripped her hips, and set her bottom on the porch railing.
Cade, I love those jeans.
I'll buy you more. He spread her legs and lowered his head. He sucked on her clit, and she bucked against his face. He held her hips down and licked along her seam before thrusting his tongue in and out.
Cade.
She tangled her fingers in his hair, and he bit down on her clit. Her honey vanilla taste spread on his tongue, and she came against his face. Her juices spread over his lips, and he drank greedily. He kissed her pussy, then trailed his lips under her stomach and her breasts. Laving her nipple, he bit, then suckled. Milk gushed, and he sucked.
Cade, that's unsanitary.
He raised his face and let go with a pop. You were going to pump anyway. I'm just helping the process along. He nuzzled her other breast and repeated the process. She wiggled against him, her wet core teasing his cock.
Cade, please. I need you. I'm on birth control from Hannah.
Thank God. He positioned himself at her core and thrust home. They both froze, and tears leaked from her eyes. Oh God, did I hurt you, baby? He tried to move back, but she wrapped her legs around his hips and locked him in.
Don't you dare leave me. I just missed you so much. I can really feel you, Cade. You're in me.
He looked into her big blue eyes, then lowered his head so his lips brushed hers. I love you.
I love you too, my wolf. Now take me, please.
Cade drew out of her oh so slowly, and she whimpered. Shh, I'll never leave you. He thrust to the hilt, hard. Her body rocked against his, and she raked her fingernails down his back. The sweet coppery scent of blood filled the air from where she broke the skin. He rocked back and thrust over again, their moans, grunts, and pants the only sounds they made. She threw her head back in a ragged gasp, and he sucked on her neck. She came against him, but he didn't stop there. He pounded into her and moved to suck her nipple again. Her breasts were empty of milk, but he bit down on the nipple anyway, relishing in her honey vanilla scent. He thrust again, hitting her G-spot. His balls drew tight, and he came, his seed filling her womb, making her come again. She fell limp against him and fought for breath. He brushed away her sweaty hair from her face and kissed her soft lips. Now I think you killed me for sure, he rumbled.
I don't think I can move.
Evidence of a job well done. She swatted at him half-heartedly and chuckled.
I think my butt may have a splinter.
Want me to check? He grinned. She smiled and bit his chin.
Take me inside, oh He-Man.
Gladly. Mel rested against Cade's chest, listening to his heartbeat while he carried her into their cottage. Her body felt heavy, yet weightless at the same time. Her mate had rocked her world, and she just wanted to curl up and never let go. The threats of responsibility homed in on her, but she brushed them away. She just needed one night. Yes, she missed Finn like a lost limb, but she had to trust in her family and the fact they'd take care of him and call if they needed help. Maddox may have looked out of his depth, but he loved Finn and would do what was best. So right now she had to think about only her Cade, every wicked thing he'd do to her, and every other wicked thing she wanted him to do to her. She shuddered in his hold, and he laughed. Dirty thoughts, baby?
Of course, we're both naked, and you're walking to the bedroom. What else could I be thinking about?
She batted her eyelashes, and he threw back his head and laughed. They reached the bed, a whitewashed wood frame, and cream and navy blue sheets pulled back on a corner. The nautical room looked so different than anything else she'd lived in. It was a nice place to visit, to escape, something they desperately needed. Cade lowered her on the bed, and she sighed.
Did we leave our clothes out there?
She asked, not really caring. Cade shrugged. I'll get them later. I'm busy. He grinned, knelt between her legs, and licked her hip. Tingles shot through her, and she lifted herself off the bed. Stay there, Mel. Don't move. Let me pleasure you. She closed her eyes and let her husband kiss, nibble, and lick her hips and thighs. He licked her nether lips, and she writhed and pushed her core closer, but he tisked and passed her clit. Damn wolf. He nibbled and stroked his fingers around her pussy, but he didn't let any dip inside her.
Cade,
she moaned. What is it, baby? What do you want? He traced a finger around her clit, but didn't stop.
You know.
You have to tell me. He bit her inner thigh.
Cade, I want you in me. Please.
She squirmed and bit her lip. Damn man was so frustrating, but all hers for the night. What do you want in you? She groaned.
Your fingers, your tongue, your dick, I don't care. Anything.
He gave a husky chuckle, and his eyes glowed gold. I like the way your mind works, love. I think I can do that. He kissed her inner thigh again, and finally, brushed his tongue across her clit. She almost came on the spot, but he pulled back and traced another finger around her opening. She was about to moan again, but then he shoved 3 fingers in her at once, curling them and hitting her G-spot. She came against his hand, her body convulsing on the bed as all rational thoughts fled. Cade lowered and bit her clit, prolonging her orgasm. The man was diabolical, and all hers. I love the way your body blushes when you come. She mumbled something, but even she couldn't tell what it was. He laughed a laugh full of pure male satisfaction and flipped her over onto her stomach. Hold on to that slat on the headboard, Mel. Shivers of anticipation ran through her as she gripped the whitewashed slats. Cade lifted her hips and settled a pillow under them so her bottom was raised.
What are you doing?
She asked breathlessly. Having my way with you.
I thought we were supposed to rest on this trip.
Not that she was complaining. Oh, we will. But I miss the sweet taste of your skin. The way your tight pussy clenches my cock when you come. The way your eyes glow gold when you're so aroused you can't even breathe. I missed all of that. She almost came at his words alone. He lowered his head and kissed both of her cheeks, then massaged them with his calloused hands. He rubbed every inch of her body, slowly. She thrummed with anticipation and arousal. He kissed and licked where he massaged until she was so relaxed she thought she could melt right there on the blue sheets. She closed her eyes and let his fingers say what they couldn't say for so long. She relished her time with him. Oh, how she had missed him. He lowered his body over hers and gripped her forearms. I love you, he whispered.
I love you too. He bit her earlobe and entered her from behind, inch by agonizing inch. He thrust slowly and methodically until they gradually reached their peak and fell down in climax together. They panted in unison, and Cade rolled to the side, pulling her with him, so they lay spooned. That was... Yeah. Did that remind you of our first time? She closed her eyes and remembered their blind date that had led to so much more. Yes and no. He kissed her temple. Yes, because I always think about our first time and how we went after each other like rabbits. But no, because this time I knew your body, but still wanted to learn every inch again. You are so sweet, you actually scare me, baby. I am the sweetest of the bunch. Don't I know it? She settled into his arms and rested her eyes. Her body sank into his, and he pulled the sheet over them. She didn't even move when he shifted to turn off the light, and they both fell asleep, content and together. Chapter 6. It was official. Maddox would never be a father. There was no way he could do it. Though he'd offered to watch Finn for Cade and Melanie because Cade had actually asked, it wasn't until now he truly understood only a fraction of what parents went through on a day-to-day basis. The little bundle of terror, also known as Finn Jamison, made Maddox want to go out and ensure he'd never have kids. Ever. Well, it wasn't as bad as that, but it was close. He still loved the little guy. After all, he was family. He had Cade's dark brown hair, but Mel's blue eyes. It was nice to look at something other than green anyway. Finn was actually a pretty good kid, just full of energy. Maddox didn't mind watching him playing with him, but he was fucking exhausted. And Mel and Cade had only been gone for 6 hours. He still had about 24 to go. Dear God. Finn waddled past him on 2 chubby legs, his gaze intent on the bookshelf and the books that weren't meant for his grubby little hands. Oh yeah, that was another thing. He hadn't known the little guy could walk when he agreed to do this. Didn't it seem prudent to mention that to potential babysitters? Yeah, Mel had mentioned it had just happened the night before, but really? Coincidence? Maddox didn't believe in those. No, the little tyke must have had a gut feeling it was Uncle Maddox's turn to take care of him, and wanted to get every ounce of enjoyment he could out of the deal. Damn kid. Maddox took 2 giant steps and lifted Finn above his head. His nephew squealed and pumped his legs in the air, as if he were still running. Finn wiggled and twisted until his face was in front of Maddox's. The little guy smiled and patted sticky fingers against Maddox's cheeks. He shuddered at the thought of where those hands had been, and what would now be on his skin. Wait, he'd just cleaned up. Where the hell had he found something sticky? Oh my God. What was on him? And how the hell did this kid always manage to be sticky? It was like they had a secret radar for gooey things and made sure they spread it around, like all over the couch, the floor, and Maddox. Finn wiggled his butt and let out a scream before pumping his legs again, his intent evident. Oh yes, he wanted to make Uncle Maddox's life hell. Damn it. Maddox didn't want to think about the amount of energy this kid would have once he got his wolf. How on earth had his parents done this 7 times? 6 little baby boy wolves in less than a decade. Thank God Kaylin was so much younger. If she had been the same age as the rest of them, his parents might have turned tail and run. And Maddox didn't think he'd have blamed them. Finn squirmed, and Maddox lowered him to the floor before he fell out of his arms. The tyke ran, well, as much as an almost 1-year-old could run, across the room, and dove headfirst into a pile of stuffed animals. Maddox winced when Finn let out a piercing cry and then shook it off.
Was that progress? Maddox watched as Finn put all of his stuffed animals back where they were before going to his blocks and organizing them. Huh. Maddox ran a hand through his hair. So the kid made messes, but cleaned them up? Except for the endless crying, the kid was actually pretty good. Maybe he just needed to start talking, like now. Maddox didn't feel any pain or sadness from whenever Finn cried. It was as if that was the only way Finn knew how to communicate, something that would have to change, soon. Finn accidentally knocked down his tower and screamed. Maddox winced. How about we have quiet time? Dear God, Uncle Maddox needed it. The exuberant emotions flooding him from this kid just about weighed him down to the floor. Usually he could block most of the emotion surrounding him so it was just a dull hum. But not with children. They were too good, too full of everything sweet and pure, and didn't have a way to funnel that. They showed all their emotion with each facial expression, each cry, each grin. Every emotion wound its way around Maddox and threatened to suffocate him. He didn't want those. He needed to breathe. Hence the reason why he usually stayed away from them until they learned to control themselves a bit more. So at least until after the teenage years. Oh God, Finn as a teenager. Maddox closed his eyes and groaned. He might have to be far, far away for that part of his nephew's life. Finn tilted his head and looked at him with blue eyes too full of knowledge. What did babies think of him? He could feel them, but he couldn't sense thoughts. He wasn't aware of any wolves that could, for that matter. His nephew squirmed, then smiled widely. A pungent odor hit Maddox's nose, and he gagged. Oh, God. Finn, you suck. I'm just saying that now. Wipe that grin off your face. Finn just smiled, and then he froze before he broke out into gut-wrenching sobs. Hey, now stop it. Maddox panicked and carried Finn to his room to change him. You need to stop crying like the world is caving in every time you don't get your way. You will be alpha one day. And despite popular belief, you won't get what you want. Just the opposite, in fact. Maddox peeled the offending diaper off and put it in the diaper genie that Mel promised would keep the smell at bay before it went to the disposal area. You're going to have to learn to control your emotions better, buddy. He wiped Finn's bottom, powdered him, and somehow got the sticky straps on the diaper to work. He'd changed Kaylin's diaper when she was a baby, but that had been a couple of decades before, and he was out of practice. Finn looked up at him, contentment at getting what he wanted flowing from him and into Maddox. Now don't do that. You didn't get what you wanted because you screamed. You stank, and it would have been unsanitary had I left you in that. But you are the heir's first son. You need to learn some responsibility, and let your parents be individuals as well as parents. They can't do that if you keep acting like a butt. Finn's lower lip wobbled, but he didn't cry. That seemed to be progress. Yelling at babies now, are you? Ellie asked from the doorway. He'd known she and North had walked into the house. He had just chosen to ignore them. Well, at least as much as he could ignore his twin and her. Finn and I are just having a talk, right? He looked down at Finn, and Maddox could have sworn the little guy winked. At 11 months he can understand you, Maddox? North chimed in, the ever-helpful doctor. I would hope so, Maddox grunted. But the reason I'm here is because, between the pack and this little guy, Mel and Cade can't breathe. So I thought I'd try and talk a little sense into him, whatever it takes. A shadow passed over Ellie's face, and raw pain washed into the room. Maddox inwardly cursed. Her brother had used a different method of talking sense into her. Damn it. But he wouldn't say anything. That wouldn't do either of them any good. North cleared his throat, a scowl on his face. Ellie and I were just stopping by on our way from dinner to see if you needed anything. Anger swept through Maddox. He tried to gauge North's emotions, but his twin had always been the best at shielding him. We're great. Nothing to worry about. Ellie raised a brow and took Finn from Maddox's arms. Their skin brushed, and he held back a growl. Her face didn't betray her reaction, and she bent to inhale Finn's baby scent. Maddox clenched his jaw and stepped toward her, his arms outstretched. Go back to your date. He bit out the last word. I can handle Finn. Go. Ellie frowned, but gave Finn back. His nephew rested his head on Maddox's shoulder, seeming to know that Maddox needed a hug, though he wouldn't have admitted that to anyone, not even to himself. North led Ellie out of the room by placing his hand in the small of her back, and Maddox's wolf growled. His wolf didn't speak much, if ever. Maddox guessed it was just another way he was a fuck-up. He let out a breath and bounced Finn up and down in his arms. Okay, we're going to get something to eat. Your job is to make sure it doesn't land on me. Got it? I don't care if you're going to be my alpha in the distant future. I'm the Omega. I win right now. Finn gave him an amused expression, and Maddox scowled. Damn kid. He carried Finn into the kitchen and set him up in his high chair. Maddox fed him and ended up coated in strained peas and carrots. Apparently Finn didn't like veggies too much. Well, he was a werewolf after all. He gave Finn a bath, ended up wet to the skin himself, then re-diapered him. Finally, he got a bottle of breast milk ready for Finn and fed him while sitting in the armchair. Maddox looked down at the blue-eyed kid noisily sucking on the bottle. How on earth do your parents do this every day? Finn didn't answer, and Maddox shook his head. I can see why they needed a break. Finn let go of the nipple and looked like he was about ready to cry again. That's not what I mean, Finn. You know they love you. I was just saying they needed some mommy and daddy time. Finn reached up and traced the long, jagged scar on Maddox's cheek. He froze. No one had touched it before. They were all too afraid. They'd deny it, but they couldn't hide their emotions from him. Finn looked into his eyes and patted his cheek before blinking and letting his hand fall. He latched onto the bottle again and closed his eyes. What was that about? His body relaxed marginally, and Maddox patted Finn's bottom and rocked him. Finn's mouth went lax, and the nipple fell from his mouth, a little dribble of milk running down his chin. Maddox quickly cleaned him up, burped him, and held him close, liking the heavy weight in his arms. When Finn slept, his emotions were muted, sort of like in a dreamy haze. Maddox relished it. He could feel the whole pack as it was, the frustration running through his father's veins at the thought of the Centrals, the lust and love running through Reed's body during Hannah's, time, the contentment running through Cade, the happiness running through Jasper, the quiet despair and desperation running through Adam, the fragile strength running through Ellie. Everyone but North. But the little bundle of Cade and Mel in his arms calmed him, something that hadn't happened in, well, ever. Maddox closed his eyes and sank into the dark, lush armchair. Only 21 hours to go, and then they'd be back. Thank God. Chapter 7. Cade woke up with a soft bottom pressed against his erection, and he closed his eyes again, sinking into his bliss. They'd made love 2 more times in the night. He felt sated, content, and oddly rested. Though they hadn't slept too much, it was as if the idea of peace made him peaceful.
What a novel concept. Mel moaned in her sleep and shifted so his cock lay nestled in the crease of her ass. His hips flexed, and she pushed back. His little wolf wanted more. Cade smiled, and beneath the sheet ran his hand up her naked thigh, over her soft belly, and cupped her heavy breast. She arched into him and turned her head so he could reach her lips, though her eyes were still closed. He lowered his head and kissed her, his tongue darting into her mouth, tangling with hers. Her sweet honey vanilla taste burst on his tongue, making his already hard erection even harder. He ground against her and tweaked her nipple. She moved back and swiveled her hips, teasing. Without saying a word, he lowered his hand and lifted her leg. She shifted, and he entered her from behind, oh so slowly. They gasped together, their heartbeats and breaths synchronized. When his thighs lay flush against hers, his cock surrounded by her warmth, he stayed there for a moment, letting peace and their mating bond wash over him. One hand wrapped around Mel, cupping her breast, and the other one lay between her legs, circling her clit. He pulled back, and then entered her again, and then again. They rocked together slowly, leisurely, restfully. Cade closed his eyes and rested his head against the back of hers, and came when she did, their bodies sweaty and loose-limbed. "Good morning," he whispered. Mel laughed softly and turned in his arms. "I'd say." He kissed her lips and jaw, nibbling along his way. "I think this is my favorite way to wake up." She sighed and snuggled closer. "I wish we could do this every morning, but then I think about waking up and watching Finn wake. You know?" Cade squeezed her. "I know what you mean. We called Maddox yesterday, 3 times. Everything was going fine." Mel chuckled. "Poor Maddox. He sounded so frazzled." "True. How about while I make you breakfast, you can go outside where we get better service and call Maddox. We'll shower, and then we can head home early." "Are you sure? I mean, I know we aren't supposed to head back until later tonight, but..." "I want to see him too. I think this helped." Mel smiled and bit his jaw. "I know it did. I feel energized and ready to start again." Despite her words, a shadow passed over her eyes, and Cade kissed her brow. "Let's eat and plan. I have a few ideas on what to do for when we get back, okay?" "Okay. I trust you." "Good." They got out of bed, and he threw on his jeans, sans boxer briefs. He liked the way Mel's eyes darkened every time he went shirtless, so he thought he'd use that for a bit. Mel pulled on a sweater dress and wore nothing underneath it. He groaned, and she winked over her shoulder. Damn. They needed food and to talk before they could leave. Okay, maybe they could make love first. Yep, that sounded like a plan. Cade shuffled to the kitchen and pulled out the food they'd put in there the night before. Willow had quickly packed an ice chest for their journey and had included her mouth-watering cinnamon rolls. His brother Jasper had found a perfect mate in her. Yeah, he and Mel could cook, but they were no Willow. He pulled them out and set the oven to warm. He started some coffee. Then he pulled out some oranges and bananas. He peeled them and set them on a plate while the coffee brewed. When the oven buzzed, he set the buns inside and kept the door slightly ajar so they didn't get too hot and burn. The smell of freshly brewed coffee teased his nostrils, and he groaned. God, that smelled delicious. The front screen opened, and Mel walked in, a smile on her face, and a tear running down her cheek.
He quickly put everything down and ran to her, his heart racing. "What? What's going on? Why are you crying? Tell me." He held her upper arms in his hands and looked down at her face.
"Everything's fine, Cade."
She lifted to her toes and kissed his jaw.
"Finn and Maddox are fine. I just heard our little boy's voice when he babbled into the phone, and I got all emotional."
He relaxed and pulled her to his chest. "I miss him too. We'll be home later." She sighed and wrapped her arms around his waist.
"And then it will start all over again."
Cade patted her bottom and nipped her ear. "Then let's do something about it."
"I hate relying on others, though."
Cade kissed her temple before releasing her and went to the oven to pull out the rolls. He turned and found Mel holding 2 steaming cups of coffee in her hands as she sat at the table. He took a mug and sipped the hot brew, the spicy roast tantalizing on his tongue. Mel took a bite of the roll, a smear of frosting glistening on her lips. Cade fought the urge to lick it off. He had to talk about their plans for the future. They could make love again soon. Just not now. "Finn is growing up," Cade said, and Mel nodded before licking her lips to get rid of the frosting. "Must not bend her over table." "So," Cade cleared his throat and continued, "he will still rely on us, but for different things. I think it may be time we wean him completely from you." He held his breath and waited for her response. He knew her feeding Finn was a tremendous connection with their son, but it was killing her. She closed her eyes, and Cade wanted to crawl under a rock and die. So much for being an alpha. As soon as he'd hurt his mate, he wanted to run away.
"I was thinking the same thing."
Relief spread through him, and he placed his hand on the top of hers on the table. "And then I was thinking of employing Kaylin."
"What?"
She tilted her head, utter confusion in her blue eyes. "Well, you've been putting your whole life into Finn and the pack, but no one has been there to give it back to you."
"Cade, I love being a mom, and acting as the heir's mate is truly rewarding and worthwhile. I don't want to change that."
"I know, but I think it's time that others know it's okay to help you." She stiffened. "And me, honestly, I've been used to relying on myself and helping others. But maybe we can ask for help too."
"So how does Kaylin fit into this?"
"I was thinking maybe she could be our nanny." Mel burst out laughing and almost spilled her coffee.
"Cade? Your sister? Kaylin?"
"Hey, she's great with Finn."
"I know, she's amazing. But would she want to be a nanny?"
"She wouldn't have to live with us or do much more than babysit daily, but it would give you time to do what you need, and for us to be alone more." She smiled softly and got up. What was she thinking? Would she feel like he was trying to take over? Mel pulled his chair back and straddled his lap. His cock perked up and slowly filled.
"I think it's a perfect idea. I know your family has been trying to help, but we've both been resistant."
"I know. I think we just wanted to prove we could do it all because we're the heirs."
"And yet, everyone else relied on us."
"Exactly." He leaned forward and kissed her lips while gripping her ass in his palms. She shifted and rubbed against his now painfully hard cock.
"So," she purred, "does Kaylin know she's been volunteered?"
"Actually, it was her idea."
"Really?"
"Really. She wanted to help out, and frankly, with the danger going on outside the den, she's bored. She offered a few months back, and now I want to take her up on it."
"Okay, so Kaylin will help out with Finn. I can work with the pack and not have to be 3 places at once, and you can actually start drawing again.
He widened his eyes. How did you know I hadn't been doing that? She kissed him.
I know you, my mate. We've been neglecting a few things in the past months.
Speaking of neglecting things, he growled in her ear, loving the way her body shivered at his touch. With a quick look at the oven to make sure he turned it off, he stood up, his delectable mate in his arms. She licked and suckled his neck, and tendrils of heat shot through him. He walked faster to the bedroom. So close, do not drop your mate. He chanted the mantra to himself as they made it to the bedroom, Mel writhing in his arms. He laid her down and spread her legs. You look magnificent. She laughed and shook her head.
I look like the only time I've slept in the past year is last night.
Beautiful.
Okay, oh mighty air. Tell me what you're going to do to me.
He loved it when his Mel was like this, and he loved when she shivered and moaned when he talked dirty. Well, first, I'm going to strip you out of this dress, inch by inch. He ran his hands up her legs, the soft skin cool on his warm palms, and gripped the edge of her dress. He slowly pulled the dress up and off as she lifted her bottom and then her torso. Cade stood at the end of the bed and looked down at his naked mate. He took in her lean legs, her widened hips since the birth of their son, her soft belly, her breast that could spill over his palms when he held their heavy weight in his hands. He licked his lips and imagined them on her rosy nipples that had become hard points, on her elongated neck, her jaw, her soft lips. God, he loved this woman. And she's our mate. He growled in agreement with his wolf. Yes, she was their mate. Mel sat up and gripped his hips. He raised a brow. Yes?
You didn't finish telling me what you were going to do.
She unsnapped his jeans and pulled them down. He stepped out of his pants, and she gripped his cock. Mel, he groaned. She stood and led him to the bathroom by his cock.
You said we needed to shower. I thought I'd help you out with this.
She let him go and bent over to turn on the shower. Taking advantage, he knelt behind her and bit one of the globes of her ass.
Cade!
He slapped her ass, leaving a red mark, then kissed away the sting. You liked it.
You bit me.
I'm a wolf, darling. I like biting. He bit her other cheek, and she moaned. See? You like it.
You're bad.
And yours.
Oh yes, definitely mine.
He ran his palms up her legs, past her belly, and cupped her breasts. She gasped in his hold, her nipples pressing into his palms. The water from the shower pulsated, and steam filled the room. He stood up and pulled them both inside. Droplets ran down Mel's body and wet her hair. He turned her around and licked a stream of water, lapping at her nipples. He closed his eyes and pulled her away from the stream so it wouldn't get in her face. She pulled at him and moaned as he bit her nipple hard.
Cade!
He pulled back and smiled. I love you.
I love you too, but please.
Cade maneuvered her until her bottom rested on the ledge so he was sure she couldn't fall. He knelt in front of her and spread her legs. Her core glistened from arousal and the water from the shower. He trailed a finger around her outer lips, and she gasped. He lowered his head and kissed her, his tongue darting in and out and circling her clit. She rocked softly against his face, and he picked up the motion before she came. While she was still writhing, he stood and entered her in 2 quick movements. Her body fit around him like a tight glove, and they both gasped. Water beat down on them, and he pistoned his hips, loving the way her breast bounced with each thrust. His balls tightened, and he came as she did. The water grew cool around them, and he laughed. "I guess we won't be getting clean," he whispered.
"We may need to take a cold shower, because I want you again."
"True." They quickly washed in the cold water and got out. Cade dried his mate and kissed her skin.
"Cade, stop. I can't focus when you do that."
"I'm just checking to make sure you're clean. It's my duty as your mate." She threw back her head and laughed.
"Well then, continue."
He licked her skin, loving her honey vanilla taste, before he groaned and pulled back. "Okay, I need to stop. Let's go get everything packed away, and then head home."
"And see our Finn."
Images of his smiling little boy filled his mind. "Yes, that sounds perfect." Chapter 8. The SUV pulled through the ward surrounding the redwood den, and a wave of peace settled over Mel from the pull of the pack. This was her home. Yes, before she'd met Cade, she'd had a place where she lived, but it hadn't been a home. The redwoods and her family were everything to her. Though it had taken a night away for her to realize they were everything, she needed to be someone else as well. Someone just for her and Cade. Someone just for her. Cade reached out and stroked her hand before wrapping his palm around hers, tangling their fingers. "Ready to enter the wolf's den?" he teased.
"Har, har."
"I know. Jasper's the funny one."
"It's true."
"I'm wounded, baby. Wounded. However, I'm getting anxious to see Finn." She bounced in her seat and smiled.
"We're such dorky parents. I mean, we run away for the night, and yet have to run home faster? What is wrong with us?"
"We love our life, even though we need time to breathe every once in a while." Their home came into view, and Mel smiled. "We're here," Cade said softly and squeezed her hand. Mel unbuckled her seatbelt the moment the car stopped and threw open the door. She glanced over her shoulder and winked.
"Last one there gets to clean up Maddox's mess,"
she taunted. Cade growled and smirked before jumping out of the car, but she had a head start and beat him by mere moments to the door.
"I win."
"Damn it." Cade shook his head. "I'm afraid to see what they've done." Mel laughed and opened the door, taking a step inside. "I resent that remark, dear brother," Maddox said from the living room. Mel stopped in her tracks and held back tears. Her home was spotless. Absolutely and utterly spotless. Every toy was put away, every piece of clothing gone. The room was dusted, vacuumed, and there were freshly cut flowers in wooden vases around the house. Cade nudged her farther in the room and shut the door behind them.
"Maddox," she whispered, "what did you do?"
He shrugged and lowered his scarred face, clearly embarrassed. An unusual emotion from the usually closed-off wolf. A soft cry made Mel turn around. Her brown-haired baby boy ran on chubby legs toward them. She knelt and opened her arms. He jumped and settled his weight against her, kissing her cheeks.
"Oh, Finn, did you have fun with Uncle Maddox?"
He grinned, and she kissed his lips, his cheeks, and his brow. She pulled back to look him over.
Did you grow? Oh no, he couldn't have grown in a day, right? Cade reached over and pulled Finn into his arms. You're a big boy, aren't you? Did you miss us? Finn squealed and hugged his daddy. Mel teared up and stood to fall into Cade's outstretched arm. God, she loved these men. No matter what was going on in her life and how many directions they pulled her in, these two would forever be her everything. A discreet cough pulled her from her thoughts, and she looked over at Maddox. He looked uncomfortable and shifted from side to side. Darn it, she'd forgotten how he felt with so many emotions swirling around him. She usually tried to limit her exuberance about certain things around him out of respect, but she couldn't help it this time. I cleaned up a bit for you, Maddox grumbled. I couldn't sleep anyway. He shrugged and tried to look like it didn't matter. But it did matter. One day Maddox would make some woman very lucky. Mel just hoped it was soon because God knew the man needed someone in his life to share his burden. Mel wiggled out of Cade's arms in Finn's reach and went to hug Maddox. He stiffened for only a moment, then held her close, his body shuddering with emotions. After about 30 seconds, he pulled back and shook off his expression. Mel smiled and kissed his unscarred cheek. Thank you for cleaning. You are an incredible man, Maddox. It was nothing, and Mom brought the flowers. If Mel hadn't known any better, she would have sworn the wolf blushed under her scrutiny. So, how did Finn do? Cade asked. I see you have all your limbs. Any bruising? Maddox gave a hollow laugh. You know I love your son, Bree too, but I don't think I'll ever have kids. Cade laughed, and Mel pulled Finn into her arms, wanting to feel him again. What? A little baby is too much for you? Her mate teased. Maddox held up his hands in mock surrender. I give up. I don't know how you do it, man. Cade turned and looked into her eyes. I don't know how we do it either, but it's worth it. Maddox smiled and shook his head. I see you two, reconnected. Cade punched his brother in the arm and scowled. Enough of that. What? You two are back pretty early. Did things not live up to expectations? Mel blushed and shook her head. Okay, brother, it's time to go. Cade pulled the Omega through the living room toward the door. Thank you very much for watching Finn. We'll repay you, I promise. Maddox scowled. You don't need to repay me. We're family. Mel smiled. Thank you anyway. And when you have your babies, I'll help you watch them. Her brother-in-law visibly shuddered and waved them off before leaving. Cade laughed and walked toward her and Finn. Should I call Kaylin? He asked. In a moment. We can get everything ready later. Let's just enjoy this time now. Sounds like a plan. What do you say, Finn? Dada. Mel and Cade froze. A lump rose in her throat. Cade's eyes filled, and he coughed. Finn? He said, his voice rough with emotion. Dada. He waved his arms and smiled like he knew he'd done something momentous. Did you hear that, Mel? Our big boy just said his first word. Mel nodded. And you said my name. You are your daddy's son, aren't you? Mama. Mel laughed and kissed Finn's cheek. That's right. You know us both, don't you? You are such a big boy, Finn. Finn patted his chubby hand on her cheek, then Cade's. Cade wrapped an arm around her and kissed her softly. I love you, my mate. I love you too, Cade. Mel kissed Finn's brow and sighed, feeling rejuvenated. She felt like she was ready to take on the pack the centrals, her baby boy, just about everything. Apparently, she'd only needed a breath and a night away. Cade leaned down and whispered into her ear, "We'll have to take another night for ourselves again." Mel shivered and turned her head to kiss him. "Soon."
This has been A Night Away, Redwood Pack. Written by Carrie Ann Ryan. Narrated by Gregory Salinas. Copyright 2012 by Carrie Ann Ryan. Production copyright 2014 by Carrie Ann Ryan.